I'm Michael Ian Bender. Stay tuned. Tape with Rabbi Doug is up next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Michael Bender.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome back, Michael. This isn't the first time on our show. Michael's new book is out, Protecting Children, Bettering the World One Child at a Time, Safeguarding and Advocating for Children in Divorce, Separation, and Parenting Disputes. Judge Michael Ian Bender is a retired judge. He's too young to retire, but he's back in office. His new firm that he is with is Caesar and Bender, and he has worked as a lawyer for so many years and was a judge. He over the years worked as a judge for Cook County. He was a prosecutor for the city of Skokie, the village of Skokie, and he was also the president of the village board in Skokie. Did a lot with the village board in Skokie and with the park district, as he was so involved with so many things. But you know, the last time I believe he was on our show is when a Torah scroll was dedicated in memory of his father, Judge Gerald Bender of blessed memory. And Gerald and I were very close. He was a wonderful man. We loved your father. I've had close connections. I officiated at his sister's wedding. We've had you know, a long time friendship, and it's so wonderful to be able to have him on with his new book, because he's very passionate about this subject, and family law is something now that he's really focusing on, though he's really practiced all kinds of law over the years. But tell me, what was the first thing, if I may ask you, that motivated you to write a book about children, about family law with children? You know, a lot of attorneys who work in family law deal with a lot of terrible situations with families, a lot of abuse with children, custody battles and things like that, we know. What really made you come down and say, I should really write a book about this? Because this book isn't a sales book. It isn't selling people on law or on family law. It's really telling people what they can do for their children who are in distress.
That's true, Rabbi. So I was fortunate to have served as a judge in the Domestic Relations Division. And having done so, I was able to help out about 40,000 children who came into the courtroom.
40,000?
About 40,000.
How long were you in that division?
I was on the bench for about 6 years, and we were doing about 50 children every morning came to my courtroom.
Wow.
And it was all the children in the city of Chicago whose parents had never been married. A lot of cases, many of the cases involved abuse, and many of the cases
And neglect.
And also children just in normal distress from the breakup of their families. So 40,000 cases, I learned a lot. It doesn't mean I'm the smartest guy ever, but when you see something 40,000 times, you learn things that other people can't learn. So after I left the bench, I said to myself, look, I have all this knowledge, it helps children, it helps keep children sane, to get them to be functional, rational, independent adults while their parents are going through distress, keep the trauma away from them. I said, I might as well write this down, because while I still represent children, and I still represent people in divorce, and I help them with their children, I help them see how to keep their children okay while they fix their family relationship, other people can do it too. And so I wrote it down. Now other people can do it. They can look at it. I wrote it for parents. I wrote it for attorneys who represent children. And I wrote it for judges who come into the division and don't have that experience yet. Also, when I'm not here, the knowledge will exist, so it can be passed down.
How true, how true. So tell me a little bit, let's go back to talk about Michael Bender. You went to law school. Where'd you go to law school?
I went to John Marshall.
So you were a Chicago-based lawyer from the very beginning.
Very true, very true. Because my father went there, and said I'd go there too. He always told me how great it was.
Did you decide to become a lawyer first of all to begin with because of your father being a lawyer, or was this something that you yourself throughout college said, you know, if I have to choose a path, that's really a good path for me?
Well, it's a great question because I started off pre-med, and about halfway through I said, you know, being a doctor is a wonderful way to help people, but that's not the way that I want to do it. I want to do it through law, and I want to do it through the court system, and I want to bring justice. That's what it's all about. That's what the court system's all about. That's what it should be about. Justice, justice, justice. We shall pursue.
Yeah. Tzedek Tirdof. Very good. Very good.
Yes.
So you went to John Marshall. So what was your first step out of law school? What do you do? Were you an intern in a firm? Did you intern with your father? How did that work for you?
Great question. So about 2 years into law school, I applied for an appellate clerkship with Justice Alan Hartman in the Illinois Appellate Court.
And I know you mentioned Judge Hartman. You also mentioned him in your book.
Yes, absolutely. I learned a great deal from him. Wonderful justice, very, very focused, showed me how to write, carries me through to this day. And showed me how to research, write. It was very, very intense. Very intense, but those things that are intense often help us out later. So I worked for him for 2 years. And then left the bench and opened law office in Michael Bender, which is now Caesar and Bender, and we're doing exclusively family law. We handle things so that we bring justice. We don't try to trick the judges. We get the information to the judges so that justice can happen for these families.
Do you miss being a judge? Is it something, being able to actually evaluate people's situations and look at what the law is and make a decision knowing that you are, second to God? Second to God, really, you're the one that has to say, I'm doing this because this is the moral, the proper, the legal thing to do for this family, and I'm taking care of this child. Did you feel in that way that you were really fulfilling a godly thing? Because some judges, of course, go the other way. They feel, I have the power myself. But some people who are judges, and I know other judges, feel like they are just doing God's will because they're able to take moral and ethical and religious and legal law and apply it to people who need it applied to them.
I hope I was doing God's work. But I will tell you, and I never said this to anybody before, but you asked this, every day, every single day, before I walked out onto that bench, I stopped and I prayed that He made me do the right thing. So I hope so. I tried. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Very nice. Very nice. I want to talk about the book a little bit. The first chapter is called The Need to Protect Children. The Need to Protect Children. So tell me, how do you suggest that we protect children just to begin with? What is the first step in protecting children, especially when they're in a non-stable situation?
Even the best parents during divorce or separation are under stress when they're in the court system. It's a great court system, but it's not a place to raise children. There's stress there, and when parents are under stress, they often can lose focus on doing what's best for their children. So it's a matter of refocusing the parents onto their children. Keep them out of the divorce. Don't have them pass messages, tell your dad this, tell your mom that.
Which goes on all the time.
Don't focus on how many nights am I going to get because then I'm going to pay less child support or I'm going to pay more child support. It's ancillary, it's irrelevant. We got to keep focused on protecting these children from trauma. That's the bottom line, because traumatized children, until they get past the trauma, cannot become functional, healthy adults. So we want to keep them out of the divorce. There's obviously more severe situations where you look at abuse, you look at substance abuse, you look at physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse. We want to keep that away from the children. If we have to retrain the parents on how not to involve their children in those things, we do that too. The goal isn't to take the children away. The goal is to let them have a healthy relationship with both parents so they can develop into healthy individuals as adults and have healthy relationships with their significant others and their children.
So as a rabbi and a chaplain, a lot of people confide in me in these situations. So tell me, often we find that an attorney is assigned to a child, and this attorney is really the one who's making the decision on the disputes between the mother and the father, because they're representing the child for the child's best interests. And a lot of times, a mother feels cheated or a father feels cheated, but this advocate lawyer for the child is really the one who has to make the decision. Are you ever in a situation where you say, I've got to do this, but I really don't want to? Have you ever been in that situation as an attorney or as a judge where, you say, the mother loves the child loves the mother, she wants to be with the mother more, but I've got to give this father his rights even though this or this situation has happened? Is there that time that you say, I have to do it because it's the law, but inside I wish I wasn't doing it? You've never been in that situation?
No, never. That situation I don't believe exists when it comes to children, because the common law of Illinois, the common law of this country, going all the way back to the Magna Carta, is that the court has the ability to do what's best for a child. And it happens to be that time with both parents is best for a child, as long as that's safe time, as long as it's not abusive time. Sometimes it has to be restricted, it has to be supervised, sometimes there has to be therapy, sometimes it has to be completely eliminated. It depends. But when focusing on the child, there really is never a situation where I would recommend or that I ever did anything that would jeopardize the health of the child. No.
I understand. So how about lawyers who are representing children and judges who are making these decisions? Do they have any special training? Is there something that you can teach them? And I know you talk a little bit about this in your book, but how do they become prepared to say, well, I have this client and there's a situation between her and her soon-to-be divorced husband, and I have to do what's best for this child. How do I learn to know what's best for this child as a lawyer?
So it's really the judge who has to know what's best. The judge is in the best position to understand everything, to see the entire forest and not get lost in the trees. So the lawyer who gets appointed, and I often do, whether it's as a guardian ad litem or a child's representative, needs to be able to get the judge what they need to make the right decision, to make the right. The child representative or guardian ad litem is really only making recommendations. They don't usurp the judge who's actually in the best position. Now, why is the judge in the best position? Because let's say a busy lawyer has 100 cases a year, 200 cases a year. A judge is hearing 250 cases a week. The sheer repetition gives them knowledge, gives them insight and an understanding of what's going on and all the remedies available, where a lawyer wouldn't have that. Now, the lawyers can be very important, but sometimes, and they are trained, sometimes they miss something, sometimes they don't get something, sometimes there's something else going on. The judge is the one who needs to be making those decisions.
So let me ask you this, how often, or how do you make a decision when to actually interview the child themselves to say, what do you want, or what do you like or dislike about this parent, or what in this situation makes you want to be with this parent instead of that parent? When do you decide that you should go to a child, and let me give a 9-year-old who's able to speak for themselves, just an example, not a 14-year-old and certainly not a 5-year-old, but somebody who's 9 or 10. When do you go to the child? When does that decision come along to say, we should have you speak with the judge and tell what you think? So
when we are representing parents and not the child, we never speak to the child. It's a no-no. That's for a child's representative or a guardian ad litem to do. But we do obviously speak to our client, and we do speak to teachers, and we do speak to every person around to hear what's going on, so we know. We tell the judge, there's a problem here. This child needs X, Y, Z, and the other parent doesn't want it to happen. This schedule is not working because the child can't get up and back to school. The child's late for school all the time. The other parent is unable to help with homework. This schedule is up and back. The child's not sleeping anywhere. a million different things, but we don't, when we represent the parents, we don't talk to the child. We'd be accused of influencing the child, those types of things. Now, when I represent the child, I always speak to the child. The question becomes, what do you do with that information?
Right.
And the same with the judge.
That's kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, what do you do with that information? So, for instance, I once represented a 17-year-old who said, I want to drop out of high school. Well, no, I didn't go to the court and say, and advocate that the child drops out of high school. It was finish high school and then work. Represent a young child who's 9 or younger. You gather the information, you determine the desires of that child. You don't determine them, you listen to them. You pick up different things you ask, how are things by mom, how are things by dad, and you gather information. But again, you're not the attorney for the child, and you don't have to follow what the 9-year-old wants, but you provide the information to the court so the court can make a decision. One of the things I'm very careful about is that if there's a determination as to where does the child live the majority of the time, you don't ever want to put on a child's shoulders that they have to choose between mom and dad. It's an internal conflict that they can't handle. So you tell the child, say, look, it's important what you think, because you don't ever want a child to think they don't matter. It's important what you think, but I don't want you to ever think that you're choosing between your parents, because it's just not your decision, it's the judge's decision.
So there's a tough situation that comes along, and that is, but, Your Honor, the child, I hate my dad. I hate my dad. I don't want to go there. I'm 16 years old. I don't want to spend a weekend with him anymore. I don't want to do it. And when I turn 18, I'll never talk to him again. I'll never see him again. When you were a judge and had to make decisions like this, how do you deal with a teenager or an adolescent who really shows severe hate for a parent and doesn't want to be there? How do you make that decision?
Well, you have to break it down. Why? Why is this here? Why is this child saying that? Is it because the parent is terribly abusive? Well, if that's the case, then maybe they're not seeing the child. If it's a situation of, well, he doesn't pay attention, I'm bored, I don't get to my activities.
Our mother influences the child to say like that.
I'm going there, or father, either way, it can happen either way.
Yeah, sure.
And we eliminate those situations. So we say to the child, okay, well, what about if we make sure that mom or dad always gets you to school on time? What if we make sure that you don't have to miss your extracurricular activities? What if we make sure that you can see your friends and then be with your mother or your father? If the child then says, oh, that would be okay, then we're solving problems.
Sure.
If a child then says, no, that's not okay, and you just went through everything that bothers them, then you start to wonder, well, what's really going on here? Everything in the world turned upside down, and the child still doesn't want to see that person. Why? Is it because that person is abusive? Is it because the other parent is saying your mother or father is terrible? Or is it a combination of the both? It could be. At the very least, we want to keep some type of relationship there, something, phone calls, check-ins, something, because this isn't about from 0 to 18. This is about from 0 to 120. So it's about 60, 80 more years of a relationship with that parent, and that relationship will change over time, and that child will, at some point want to have a relationship, and for sure would be better off if there was some type of communication, whatever that was.
What happens when an absentee parent, someone who's lived out of state for all these years, comes along and says, now I want visitation rights for my child, and this child doesn't even know the other parent? And I've heard of situations where judges say, well, you're going to have to fly to California for one weekend every 6 months to spend time with your father because he has rights too to be with you. How do you deal with the emotional strain on a child who doesn't even know their parent and is being forced to spend time with them after years of being separated from them completely?
Well, it's very situational. It depends on the age of the child, depends upon the reason for the absence, depends upon the ability of the child to be ready to do that. It's very, very, very situational. It's not an automatic go fly to California to see your parent. Let's have the other parent come in. Let's put it in a therapeutic environment. let's talk out the resentment that this child now has for the abandonment. That resentment is something that child has to get out of their inside. It has to be worked out. It's not healthy, and it never will be healthy until that's worked out. So, glass half full. At least we can work on the situation. Turn lemons into lemonade. But it wouldn't be a matter of, well, all of a sudden a parent shows up and, okay, off you go.
No, that I know.
That's not how to do it.
Right. All right. We're here on Taped with Rabbi Doug with Michael Ian Bender. He's a retired judge and an attorney, and we're talking about his book, Protecting Children, Bettering the World One Child at a Time, and we'll be right back.
Maria?
Yeah?
Some things on TV scare Elmo.
If some things on TV make you or you feel sad or scared, tell a grown-up that's close to you.
Like you, Maria.
Yes, like me.
I'm Judge Abner Mikva, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Welcome back. We're here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I'm here with Judge Michael Ian Bender. He's a retired judge and an attorney who is representing family law, and this is his book, Protecting Children, Bettering the World, One Child at a Time. We're talking about your book, and we're talking about you as a lawyer and a former judge. When is it appropriate that you say as a judge or as a lawyer to a judge, we can't make this decision, we need an outside expert, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, somebody to come in and testify and tell us what should be done. When does that come along? How do you find that point in time?
So as opposed to a therapist who's going to work on the situation, but to have somebody come in and actually make a recommendation, that's generally saved for situations that just are not going to resolve without a trial. And at that point, the judge makes a determination, do I need the help of a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a social worker to provide information as to what is best for this child. Allegations of mental instability, either of the child or of either parent, often is involved in this. There could be testing, MMPI and other things. It's extremely situational, it's expensive, it's invasive, and sometimes unnecessary, but if it's going to go to trial, then usually there's going to be what's called a 604.
So when DCFS is involved in a case and there's no determination, and all of a sudden the judge comes and says, look, we can either make this child a ward of the state or we can place them with a grandparent if the grandparent will take them. If it's your client, how do you deal with something like that when you think as the attorney that your parent really is a good enough parent and it would be better for the child to be with the parent, and then the judge comes along and tells you, no, you're either going ward of the state or you're finding a grandparent or a relative to take this child. They're not going home with mom. How do you deal with that as an attorney? What is your it's obviously emotionally draining on you as an attorney because you get involved in your cases. How do you deal with it, and what are your thoughts when things like that happen?
Well, first of all, if I'm advocating for a parent to be with a child, I believe it to be true. I won't do it otherwise.
I understand that.
If a parent comes to me and I don't, and they have a position, same thing with my partner, Molly. It's a matter of if we don't believe that they're going to do what's right for the child, we're not going to take the case. Now that doesn't mean that if they come in and they have a position that we don't believe is good for their child, that we won't try to have them understand what's best for their child. If somebody comes to us and they're in need of some help, we'll get them the help so they can have the time with their child, or more importantly, their child can have safe time with them. Going to DCFS, first of all, I can tell you as a former judge that DCFS, in the 40,000 cases that I did and the thousands that DCFS came in on, never once did they ever look to put a child with anything other than, as you said, a grandparent, another family member.
Oh, by the Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS.
They've always looked to put somebody with a family member with the concept of getting the child back to the parent once it's safe. And they provide intact services, which are great, which provides maybe drug testing, and could be food, and shelter.
Sometimes group homes.
But all kinds of things for the parent, for the parent to be able to continue on and raise a child. That's always that's the goal. Now, if it's not safe and a person doesn't learn, for instance, I've had people stand in front of me and I say, you can't hit your child, and they would say, well, you can't tell me what to do. And I say, well, let me explain it to you. It's not good for them. There's better ways to do it. And they say, no, you can't tell me. Eventually, I would say, okay, well, if you hit your child again, you're going to go to jail. And they say, oh, what do you mean? They back up to get the point across. But if they won't learn, you just don't let them be with the child. DCFS is very, very well-meaning agency, but at the same time, DCFS is not the court system. And DCFS is not something that judges should be listening to as far as whether or not there are problems in the home. They're very busy, and I have a lot of respect for DCFS. Without them, things would be much worse. But they're very busy, and they don't always look at things in the way that a judge can look at them. And unfortunately, there's a study that just came out that demonstrates that many, many children die, even though DCFS said everything was fine. So judges can't rely on DCFS, and they're not required to rely on DCFS. In fact, judges need to make their own decisions about the children in front of them.
Tell me, what's more prevalent in abuse with children? Is it physical abuse or is it emotional abuse? It seems to be more prevalent in abuse with children because children can be affected almost the same way by both of them. And how have you found that to be?
Well, emotional abuse logically is going to be more prevalent because everybody doesn't hit. But physical abuse is widespread. And the question becomes, well, what is physical abuse? What's the difference between physical punishment and corporal punishment? There is no difference. None of it's good. Now, look, I understand that if someone spanks a child, it's different than somebody hitting a child with an extension cord. I get that, but neither one is good.
So you don't advocate any corporal punishment, even a patch?
Zero.
Is zero?
Zero, because you're really only teaching a child that big people hit little people. That's all you're showing. And a lot of other things can happen. People say, well, this is just discipline, but often it's not. It's anger. And so now you're showing that when you're angry, you can hit, and that spills over into how they raise their children and into their relationships. Well, it's okay to hit my wife. I mean, these kind of things, or it's okay to hit my husband. And it spills over terribly.
Sure.
Same with, you're going back to abuse, there's also sexual abuse, and it's very, very widespread. People don't talk about it. It's very awful, and it doesn't just happen in certain neighborhoods, and it doesn't just happen in certain communities. Fortunately or unfortunately, as a judge, I was able to see everywhere it's happening. Nobody knows what happens in their next door neighbor's house, but I do. I was able to sit there and watch it, and it's all over and everywhere.
It's unbelievable.
It's terrible.
I can't thank you enough for just sharing a little bit about your book, a little bit about family law that you've experienced with our viewers. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope to have you on again and talk more about this stuff.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Retired Judge Michael Ian Bender, attorney. His book, Protecting Children, Bettering the World, One Child at a Time. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web. If you want to know more about Protecting Children, the book, or Michael Ian Bender, you certainly can email us at info@tvrabbi.com, and I will forward that email to Michael, and I know he'll get back to you personally. Hope to see you next time, right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.